We're trying to draw on some of our experiences in that regard to maybe give it a little bit a different perspective. So, to start with, I would like to address the elephant in the room. What is work-life balance? And I'm sure that when you hear the term or you hear the word work-life balance, something comes to mind. You kind of know and understand what I'm referring to. But to us working in the field, it feels like a little bit like this elephant from the fable, from the tale, where a couple of blindfolded men are asked to define the elephant or understand what it is. And they're all touching a separate part of the elephant's body. Some of them that grabs by the tail says this is a rope, and the other one grabbing the foot says this is a tree trunk, or it's it's a wall. So we all have a very different perspective, and I'm quite interested in looking forward to this session also from this sense that it's a very multidisciplinary field, and it's very complex. Actually, the more you look at it, the bigger it gets. And it concerns HR people, and they have a very different perspective on it. It concerns public policy. It concerns employers and private individuals as well. So this is an issue that has evolved over time, and actually in some countries we even then see a backdrop or withdrawal. This is quite typical, for example, for the post-Soviet countries or even the former Central and Eastern European countries, where there were quite a lot of services in place, public services for childcare, after-school care, elder care, that following the transition to market economies have been withdrawn and taken away. And now we have to fight all over again for these services, this recognition of these needs to be there. And also in a very different, almost an ideological or philosophical background, if you just compare, for example, Germany with the United States, similar levels of economic development, yet in Germany there seems to be this of social justice and fairness, of allowing everyone a fair chance, and from guaranteed place in an early childhood care and education facility to upskilling, to facilitating women's return to the labor market, to the US, where pretty much everybody is left to their own devices unless they are very rich and can afford good quality care. So going to what is at the heart of the work we're doing is really the intersection. That's what really excites us, the intersection between these different domains. So where is the intersection between our work and our knowledge? And also the intersection between public policies and public services, private companies offering to fill some of these gaps, organizational behavior and culture and norms. This is really what gets us excited. Eurofound, I see we have one of the colleagues here, they have published another report actually just last week, I think, about the gender gap, and they estimated that the gender gap costs the European economy 320 billion euros per year. And this is really what fascinates us, how are these different players interacting in either enabling, for example, women's participation on the labor market, or really hindering? What are the norms, what are the cultural features? And one of our favorite questions to ask is why? Why would a CEO or a company director decide to put in place policies? And let me illustrate this a little bit with an example. The German bank Sparkasse, and in particular the branches in North Rhine-Westphalia, they have introduced a very interesting policy for fathers, new fathers, and it's called the Fathers Network, and they offer a seminar building among new dads. So very interested in finding the why. Why have they decided? Is it because the banking sector has suffered very bad? And his son is a millennial dad. And so he witnessed firsthand the choices his son made as a new dad as opposed to his own choices when he was a father. And he thought this is important, let's try to help these new dads also balance their work and their career with their caring and father role. So you can see that quite often or sometimes, I have no evidence to say whether it's often or sometimes, but this is an emotional decision, and this is really something that how this can be scaled up. So a little bit just about the WorkLife Hub, because we're perhaps a new furry mammal within these institutional walls. We are a research and consultancy company. We do research for private institutions on these interlinkages. We also go directly into the companies and help them figure out their people policy, their HR, their work organization. So we can draw from some experiences and perceptions that we work with the companies. And we a podcast series, we speak, we try to talk about these issues and to spread our motto, breaking the mold, on the world around the perfect worker ideal, the single male breadwinner model, the person who has no outside of life commitment or interest, and this is why we have committed ourselves, also because but also to grab and disseminate all this knowledge, we're just contributing to the growing of inequality. We see that some sectors, some skilled workers, some experts already have a huge personal bargaining power in their workplace for work-life accommodation, and this can be a company in Mongolia or Serbia. It doesn't have to be a company in Germany or in the US. If you have the right skill set, if you're doing the job that is indispensable, then you can ask for literally what you want. It can be a panini in the fridge, it can be a personal cook that's in these big tech companies, but also childcare, elder care. Whereas the rest of the people who do not have this bargaining power with these skills, they're going to be left behind. So I think that you have heard already enough today about the key trends. We all know them. So I just would like to look at maybe the last two, and in particular from an employer's perspective. One is digitalization and disruptive innovation, and the other one is the reduced cost of consumer goods. You know that there have been a number of sessions today that digital technologies are fundamentally shaping the way we work, internet-enabled platforms, etc. So on the one hand, just briefly addressing what is work-life interference. So because workers have their own devices at work, they do telework, we see a lot more distractions, basically. And you probably also are aware that if you're in an office work, if you're a service knowledge worker or service sector, it gets more and more difficult to actually get some work done while you're at work, because we are distracted by our devices, the devices that enable others to see and hear us and get in touch with us, emails, but also we may have interference from family members, especially if we have young children or people in our family who are ill. They may want or need us even while we're at work. So there's a lot of interaction and interference there, and also a lot of work spillover into our private lives, our private time with these devices. So it's the difficulty fully being able to switch off. But the other aspect of this is also that everyone in your company all of a sudden is in sales. And just illustrating this by an example, you may be working, well, not you, but someone may be working in a petrol station, and a celebrity comes and gets his petrol at that petrol station. So you just take a picture and you tweet. You become your organization's own salesperson, the most convincing, the most authentic brand advocate there can be. So companies have really resisted this for a long time by not allowing Facebook, not allowing social media, blocking with the servers, etc. But the more forward-looking companies are enabling more and more these own devices, not only because they know that if you can take care of an urgent phone call from your child's school, this may take 5 minutes, but then for the rest of the day you may stay more productive. But also it means that it gives you access to knowledge, it gives you access to resources, but on the other hand you also can turn this around and speak on behalf and give a glimpse into your company. There's Glassdoor anyway. Employees can go there and anonymously rate your company. So there's no longer these shut doors and walls. We are seeing more and more of this two-way communication. So what is the impact? So sometimes trends are impacting both employers and public policy and also individuals. So digital technologies are impacting everybody, aging, more women at the workforce, diversity. These are all impacting all aspects and all domains. And sometimes we manage to put our noses into the same direction and policy actually goes in the same flow as practice. And then we have convergence, but sometimes they go the opposite way. And then we have divergence. And let me just give you one practical example of how I see. For example, if you remember last year, there were quite a number of headlines in the US where there's no paid parental leave or paid family leave or very short. Some companies in the Silicon Valley, some tech companies were saying that we will now offer paid family leave, even up to 1 year, to our employees. And this created fantastic reputational headlines for them, but also it contributes further to inequality. Because it was really these highly skilled employees that had access to these fantastic policies and not the rest, not even the people working in the cafeteria in those same companies. So, I'm aware that I don't have a lot of time left. So what is the objective here? The objective is that we want happy, healthy, and skilled employees or contractors or freelancers or workers, however we want to call them. So happy is when they're engaged, when they're motivated. So we try to keep them happy. And this is when a lot of those workplace services or perks come in place. For example, your fitness pass or your chef or unlimited beverages. We have a lot of that. Fortunately, more and more in terms of happy, we also have more empowering services and also volunteering and being active in the community, but also trying to reduce the work-life conflict can come here. Then healthy, we want healthy employees. So we, again, sports opportunities, for example, but also more and more mindfulness services, more and more coaching, mentoring, and skills. Now, I also would argue that when we are in the recruitment phase and we submit our CVs to the same job or the recruiter receives very similar CVs, usually because the person specification is very, very focused, so they would get a number of CVs which are usually very similar. So they have had the same degrees, they have had more or less the same work experience, but then recruiters look into what makes this person special, what is going to make this person a really creative or fun or active member to contribute to this workplace. And often they look for what is on the edges. Do they play in a band? Do they volunteer? And I would argue that a lot of what is this in the non-work domain is very enriching actually to a person's life and makes him or her a very valuable colleague. And then we come back to our motto, the breaking the mold, is because once the person is hired, then usually they still would like him or her to forget all of these outside of work engagements, whatever made this person so special and so outstanding, and to be in the job. So there's a lot of research about work-life enrichment, how being a happy person outside of work actually makes us a much more engaged and happy and innovative contributor at the workplace. So do you remember the elephant that I showed you at the beginning? Again, here we're seeing a lot of fragmentation. Companies, employers are not tackling the employee as a whole, but they're taking a lot of different courses in terms of where they would like to, skill them, how they skill them. They offer training programs, how they ensure that they're happy, and then how they ensure that they're healthy. And there's a big competition actually for the grace of employers between coaches and between even online platforms who provide HR analytics and feedback software. So HR and companies are actually getting, I think, quite confused and lost as to what can we actually provide to our employees that they are happy, healthy, and skilled. So this is the business case to convince employers that investing in their employees is actually absolutely crucial, especially in view of what we say or speak about here, the future of work, because we've heard this. A lot of the skills that are going to be needed to be working alongside smart machines or to be in virtual offices, a lot of these skills are actually those of we used to refer to as soft skills. So it's about empathy, it's about creativity, it's about innovation, it's about sifting through and prioritizing large numbers of information. And actually a lot of these skills are acquired in informal settings or non-formal settings, so outside of the actual workplace. So we say that if you offer a good work-life balance, if you have good work-life initiatives, you will absolutely enhance the performance of your employees. You will have a reputational benefit because they will be happy to go out and talk about you as an employer of choice. It will reduce costs through reduced absenteeism, reduced burnout, and a higher number of returns from leave, for example, and it will enhance the innovation capacity. So, I have 5 minutes. So, I wanted to show you, this is a new, quite new office building of Adidas, and they have been in the news quite a lot, because we always talk about Google and Airbnb, but I wanted to bring a European example. This is their headquarters in Germany, and they have really gone out of their way to create the kind of environment, to create the kind of culture that is going to really foster employee well-being, happiness, and so they of course have a large sports facility, and not only that they have the large sports facility, employees are free and allowed to go and use, because the culture is there, the permissive culture, the encouraging culture is there, and if you know that if within a company what they preach is not what they do, for example, if even there's telework opportunity, put everybody in copy, just to show your working. This is really a place where they trust employees, they give them plenty of opportunities to explore, to be creative. They have an on-site childcare facility, for example. They have a great culture, and it's because they have put the people at the center. And I just really enjoyed, and now I don't remember who said it this morning, who said that we had strategy and planning, but we see that these plans don't work, or maybe the outcome is different. So we see more and more companies that say, and Adidas did that, they said, in our next plan of our next period, we will not have financial targets, but we will have our people targets. We will boost our employees, our biggest asset, and we will see then how we perform after. So it remains to be seen. So you can see that there's, of course, more and more headlines about, the transparency has really increased. And this is what brings me to Readiness. So this is another element or aspect that really fascinates us. How do we know that a company or an employer is ready to transition into this new world of work from this old way, this 19th century way of doing things by command and control, by presentism? How do we know? And so there are some elements of where you can say readiness, and one of them is transparency and openness. Quite often we saw in the past and still exists that someone would come with a personal issue to their line manager and say, I have a caring problem in my family or healthcare issue. Can you let me, go home on time or come later? And then the manager would say, yes, we can accommodate this, but don't tell anybody. So it would be really this individual accommodation without a fairness or openness for everybody. So once there is transparency within the workplace, we know that they're ready. A willingness to try new things and perhaps fail. These work-life issues or company culture is very individual, highly individual. You cannot copy and paste. You cannot say, okay, Adidas has done that, now we're going to do the same thing. It may not work in your company. So it actually takes effort and time and investment. It's a really bottom-up project to find the work redesign that works for you. Essentially asking what needs to be done around here, who is doing it, and when and where are they doing this work. And then line leadership and line managers. Line managers' skills are one of the key essential components. Most of the mental health problems that happen in work is because of incompetent or controlling line managers. And I just want to finish up with this one example. This is a project from the European Bank of Reconstruction and Development. They've done transportation, infrastructure projects, and this is a bus driver lady and in Kazakhstan. So how to assess the readiness that women were ready to become bus drivers in Kazakhstan and to boost women's participation on the labor market to have a much better work-life balance. So firstly, they had to look at the legal environment, the enablers. Could women really be bus drivers? So firstly, they had to see that there was a law that stipulated that to drive buses, you first need to have a license for these really heavy vehicles. Whereas now technology and the technology enables the buses to be driven very easily. They are driven like cars essentially. So there was firstly a legal obstacle because you don't need anymore this pre-qualification to drive a bus. So they had to change the legislation there. Then they were waiting for women at the bus stop when they recruited these women bus drivers because they had labor shortage, they also had skill shortage, and the women weren't there. And then they investigated and found out that the child care center didn't open so early as to allow the women bus drivers to be at the bus station to come and start their shift. So then they had to go to the child care center and change the conditions there to make sure they opened half an hour earlier. So again, coming back to this elephant, for this woman or someone, a man, a woman, whoever, anybody, to have a fulfilling working life, having a happy home life, you need to take into a number of factors. And when these factors work together beautifully and they gel, it's possible. If not, you may have some factors that really prohibit people from participating in meaningful careers or work in the labor market, or even though they would like to, who have care responsibilities or other responsibilities. So this is just what I wanted to say. We're looking from a systemic point of view at this piece of puzzle, and I just want to thank you for your attention, and if you have any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, Agnes. And the second presentation is of